Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to be piggybacking off of yesterday's video where we checked out an Opeth track from their earlier days, and today we're going to be looking at something from their later albums. I'm going to be analyzing it on its own merits, but also I'm going to do a little bit of comparing and contrasting with some of the works that we checked out in yesterday's Forest of October, specifically the vocal mix, which I thought was interesting, and then some of the ideas of duality which showed up in their writing, including dyads and mixed meter. So, let's get into this and see what's going on with Opeth's new stuff. This is a song that I can't pronounce the title. Hjärtat, vad handen gör, which I probably trashed. I apologize for mispronouncing that one. Let's get into it though. Man, really throwing me off. I thought we were 9/8 for a sec, or 7/8 actually. Just a hair shorter than 4/4, but there's those little hiccups. Yeah, it's like it's a pickup note into a dotted quarter that goes across bars. Alright, the biggest change is those vocals. Yeah, we are not in 4/4. We're in something slightly more or less. Alright, so we're in 15/8. Like I said, just a hair less than 4/4. Still lots of harmony work. I'm really digging that. Now we're in 4/4. I'm loving the melodic lines and the real strong sense of atmosphere. Really strong sense of groove coming from the drum and bass too. So weird. There is a 15/8 in there, but I think it's alternating with something else. They're still playing around a lot with triplet feels though, and I don't know if I'm just getting a song where they explored that idea again or if it's just part of their DNA. Maybe triplet is not the right word, but still groups of three that sort of offset the rhythmic elements. For instance, this rhythm right here is 3/3/2, which creates 8, which fits in 4/4, but it really has these two sluggish elements and then a fast ending. Very chaotic though. Nice contrasted section. Gorgeous. Gorgeous writing. What? Very bright and poppy atmosphere here though. Very soft rock. Those nice slides on the bass. Yeah, I love the 3-layer thing they have going on here. Maybe 4-layer? There's a lot of moving parts here, and it's just gorgeous together. Yeah, every bit about that ending. I'm going to back that up 1 second. Okay, at the very last second, there is a very quiet spoken word. I'm not sure what it was, but it's an interesting way to put the period on the end of that track. So yeah, lots of really cool things going on in here. First of all, as is the theme of the week, drastic shift from what we checked out yesterday in Opeth's Forest of October. We went from some extremely harsh, dissonant tones, really working with some creeping atmosphere, into a rather palatable rock song, I would say. Um, it almost, I'd almost incorporate this into prog rock with some of the playfulness of it, yet still being quite palatable, which is a drastic shift from death metal. um, So yeah, let's get into some of these ideas here. Let's analyze the song a bit and see what's going on before we get into comparing and contrasting the two tracks. So let's start with some of the fundamental uh, skeleton of the track, and let's talk about time signature. So this one was all over the place. There were plenty of sections that worked with pretty standard 4/4. And a lot of the song retains a bit of a 4/4 feel, especially there at the beginning when I wasn't quite sure. And the thing is I'm 90% certain they were in 15/8. And 15/8 feels very, very, very close to 4/4. It's 4/4 with a single 16th note removed from a 4-bar phrase. And the difference it makes is extremely subtle. No, a 16th note removed from a 2-bar phrase. That's it. It's a single 16th note removed. So 1/16th of a 2-bar phrase, 1/32 of the phrasing is 1/32 of a bar. You can think of it as that. Or 1/16th of one bar, a full bar, and then missing 1/16th of a bar. Where they take such a small slice out, but you can feel it. It feels just that slight bit of disjointed, but when you're counting it out, you're still mostly counting the full 4. You really got to have a strong internal metronome to really feel that something's missing. And that's what caused me to start counting in subdivisions to double check, because I couldn't tell if we were in 4/4 or not. So I started counting subdivisions, and that's when I realized we're missing a 16th in one of these. And it seems like they were alternating. They were doing an 8/8 and then a 7/8, which would probably be the easiest way to go about envisioning that. The first bar is 8/8, the second bar 7/8, and you're missing that eighth note there. No, I think I have my math wrong then, because you're missing an eighth note. Yeah, no, we're fine. We're fine. We're missing an eighth note on the end of that if we're in 8. Like I said, we're talking 7/8 and 8/8 rather than 4/4. But the concept remains, even if some of that went over your head. There's just the tiniest sliver missing. But they don't stick with that 15/8 all the time. It feels like sometimes there's a random 2/4 thrown in there. And I'm not completely sure it's a 2/4. But it was really difficult to count some of those sections just because of all this time wonkiness going on. But I feel like occasionally we were getting 8/8, 7/8, 4/8, 8/8, 7/8, 4/8. And it turns it into a 3-bar phrase, which in itself already feels odd. Because it's 3. 3 is an odd number. But then we also have all these wonky time signatures in it as well. 8/8 is pretty standard. That's 4/4. You're getting a full regular feeling bar out of it. 7/8 is a slight hiccup. You're losing that 1/8 note, and then 4/8 is going to be half of a bar. So we're it just has this very, to me, constantly tripping over itself feeling in those sections. The 15/8 on its own already feels awkward, but then those few sections where they toss in that third bar as well and turn into a 3-bar phrase, um, yeah, the whole song just had this weird awkwardness to it as far as time feel and momentum and rhythm. But the interesting thing is, I don't think it's too difficult to just fall into the groove. I think the drummer did a fantastic job at working within those odd time constraints and still creating something groovy and working with a metronome feel, so that there's still something for the listeners to sort of bob their head to and get into the groove and just fall into the song rather than really feel like they're constantly tripping over the meter. And that is not an easy thing to do. It was very apparent to me that there is some time stuff going on, and unfortunately, I did spend a lot of the song trying to figure it out because every time I thought I had got it, something new was thrown in. They were constantly eluding me by changing it up so often. Um, but at the same time, eventually, I just kind of get used to it, and that in itself is spectacular. That is some really good rhythmic writing. Being able to take something that's a bit chaotic as far as the meter goes and making something very palatable to the listener as far as the rhythmic element. So, right there, right off the bat, I'm already impressed. Um, the clean vocals, gorgeous melody lines. I love the way that this statement's going to go throughout all the instruments who had melodic elements, but the flow that they have, the way that they write their melodies, the rises and falls in them, choosing to go higher or lower, and just how they map out their melody lines is just gorgeous. You can tell this is a band who has practiced their craft and practiced writing music for many years. They have this real natural way of creating their melody lines that are both catchy yet powerful. And I love that. There's a lot of emotion in the note selections themselves, completely divorced with how it's presented, whether how it's played on a guitar, how it's sung, whatever emotion is in the performance itself. There's still a lot of really cool things going on in the music outside of the performance. Speaking of that, their melody lines are gorgeous, but even better is their counterpoint. There are a couple of sections in here where you can hear multiple melody lines. Usually the vocalist has one, and a guitarist is going to have the second. Sometimes another guitar will have the third, and even at the end, we heard quite a few guitars and a bass. I'm not sure how many layers that final section was, but minimum, I would say we got three guitar layers and a bass. There is a possibility there was a fourth guitar layer, but it was starting to get a bit unclear with so many of the timbres being identical. Not being identical, being similar. So, but regardless, just the way that they can write all these melody lines and bring out these emotions and textures is very reminiscent to me of more classical writing, especially once we get into uh, trios and quartet writing. I mentioned yesterday that I don't know if they have any classical training, but that they had classical elements in their writing. And here I'm beginning to lean a little harder into that idea of classical training. If not, then maybe at least exploring classical composition and how to incorporate that into their music, even if they're not trained by a composer, or personally trained, going to school or whatever, mentoring under a composer. Even if it's just exploring the music on their own and having the intuition to absorb what they're hearing and apply it to their own stuff. It would not surprise me to find out that one or multiple people from this band have explored classical music and how to incorporate it into their works. Just because now I have heard two songs from them, the beginning in an older song and a newer song, and both of them have some ideas that do not show up too often in the music that they play. So yeah, I'm digging those elements. And I think the last thing we got, the melody lines, the time signature, just the overall feel of the song. They're in, what's that word, man? Why am I blank? Atmosphere. The atmosphere of the track is very interesting because it is sort of positive. It is a huge 180 from yesterday's creeping unsettlingness. There's this all this positivity and brightness to the song. There's warmth in the vocals, complete drastic change from those growls. There's just a lot more positivity here, and I'm not sure if that is a change in the band members themselves. Maybe they've matured over the years, and they don't want to write music like they did, or maybe it's just a want to try something new. But I think it's interesting to see a band go from something that is very unsettling to something that is very warm and welcoming. This song does not sound like it's trying to warn me or scare me away. And it feels like it's trying to invite me in and to dwell within what it's, vibing with, and its environment and stuff like that. So I'm really digging that aspect. I think it's interesting just to see how far they've changed. I don't know if this is a very drastic differentiation. Maybe the rest of this album is not as positive as this one, but it is interesting to see that they have created songs on two very different ends of a spectrum. Now let's compare this with yesterday's Forest of October. Now there's going to be the surface differences, of course, with that one being very harsh and very metally, and this one really going towards more of a rock sound. But I think the more interesting thing is looking at what remains. They still play around with meter. We don't necessarily see a lot of polymeter going on here, but I'd say that we see an extrapolation or possibly even an evolution of those ideas in their wild meter changes between bars. Instead of smashing 2 meters into a single 4-bar phrase or 8-bar phrase or whatever, we're actually creating multiple different time signatures in a phrase. As I stated earlier, I'm pretty sure there was one section where we were moving between 8/8, 7/8, and 4/8, or something along those lines. The 8/8 and 7/8 I'm certain of. That third bar, I'm still a little iffy. It feels like it was half of a bar, but I mean, we're talking about small portions of a bar. It could easily have been 3/8 or 5/8 as well. So those elements are still here. It's interesting to see the expansion, or again evolution, of their idea. They used to work a lot with dyads, and they were creating these gorgeous melody lines with two instruments utilizing the same rhythmic structures while changing up the notes themselves. Here we see them take that to the next level, and instead of just working with dyads, we're actually working with multiple melodic lines rather than just multiple notes. And where we saw the triad work at the end with the 2 guitars and the bass, here we see a triple counterpoint with 3 guitars and a bass all doing their own things and creating this gorgeous section. Interestingly, both of those parts came at the end of a song and were sort of, I don't want to say tacked on, but in both situations, they were not extremely connected to the meat of the song that came before it. With Forest of October, it was a very withheld section against a song that was mostly heavy and unsettling, kind of mixing between those two ideas. And here we had that super subdued soft rock section at the end of a more proggier rock song. It is interesting how that idea also carried over of ending a song with a section that is a bit divorced from the rest of it. I think that this ending connects a little bit better as far as chord progression and overall feel, but it's still, like I said, it's still a bit of a departure from the music that came before it. Let's see. Yesterday we also, the vocal mix. There's not really much to talk about there. That was a big thing that stood out to me, was how the growls were mixed, but there is no growling here. So that is something that changed very drastically, is the vocals. I wonder how many more songs off of this album, and possibly albums that are around it in release year, maybe the one that came out after it if there was one that came out before it, if they incorporated any growls. And interestingly, where they made the transition. Was it a harsh transition? Did we have growling on one album and none on the next? Or was it a gradual change, slowly incorporating both and then favoring cleans and then making a full clean album possibly? So that's interesting, to see a band go from growls, all growls. I don't think there was any cleans in yesterday's song, going to a song that has no growls, just the complete opposite end of the spectrum as far as vocal delivery. The language is another interesting thing. I believe yesterday's song was in English, at least the title was. This one was not, neither the title nor the lyrics themselves. Again, I don't know if that was a trend on this album, if they began to embrace, maybe is the word, their native language, I'm going to assume, or if this was a one-off and maybe everything else on the album was in English and this one they decided to do in their native tongue. I don't know how that works either, only having this single song exposure to the album. But, actually, I have one other. The same, one of the recommended videos, it's the same album art, so I'm going to assume it's the same album. Heart in Hand is the song. So the entire album is not in their native language. There is at least one song in English. So it's interesting that this one was the one chosen for me to listen to, with that distinction. The other thing that stood out to me with yesterday's song is Chaos. It was a very proggy song that embraced chaos in their transitions, and this one is still a proggy song, though it embraces chaos in its time signature. Some might see that as a maturation of the idea of chaotic composition. Some might see it as a sort of parallel idea running in tandem. But it is interesting to see that that idea of smashing together different ideas that sort of create a disjointed feeling is still present, even though the overall atmosphere of the song is not as harsh as it was. So yeah, I think this is a fantastic way to start the week. There's a lot of drastic changes here, but it's also interesting to look at the way that things have stayed the same throughout the years that sort of make up the DNA of the band and present themselves even when they're trying to do something completely different. This is the kind of stuff I'm looking forward to in the rest of the week, and I hope the quality and the distinction between the old and the new continue to be just as diverse as we got with Opeth. That's all I have to say, though. This is where you guys come in, though. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you enjoyed this or not, anything that stuck out to you, maybe bounced off of you, and also any of your thoughts on how the old Opeth and the new Opeth sort of work together. A little bit of compare and contrast there. When you're done commenting, you can head up to the description box. There's a Linktree link in there, which is just super nifty. It takes you to a nice menu with all the links for stuff that's adjacent to the channel, such as joining the Discord community, following me on Twitter, or supporting the channel through Patreon. Above that, you can like, subscribe, and ring the bell. All three things help out with the YouTube algorithm, and they help the channel get promoted. Until next time, remember to be... Oh no, I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, with another episode. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.